Greetings children, welcome back to the class of excretory system. Today in our class we are going to learn about function of kidney, that is formation of urine. Already in last class we discussed about the formation of urine. The first step of formation of urine is ultrafiltration. Let me give you a recollection again. There are two major steps in formation of urine. The first one is ultrafiltration and the second step is reabsorption. The first step, that is ultrafiltration, which occurs in glomerulus. And in glomerulus there are two different blood vessels. One is entering into and the other one is leaving out. And the entering in blood vessel is known as afferent arteriole, this one, and the leaving out blood vessel is efferent arteriole. The afferent arteriole is wider and efferent arteriole is narrower. This is narrower and this one is wider. This difference, the difference in their diameter, creates huge pressure. That high pressure pushes out all the waste materials, sometimes along with the waste materials, not sometimes, mostly along with the waste materials. Glucose, water, most of the other substances will also be expelled out of glomerulus. So in Bowman's cup, in glomerulus, ultrafiltration occurs due to the higher pressure difference which is created by the narrower efferent arteriole. This is ultrafiltration. And what are the products that is being coming out, or what are the substances which are separated out due to ultrafiltration? It consists of water. What I am talking about is the glomerular filtrate. Okay, the glomerular filtrate consists of water, urea, salt, glucose and other plasma solutes too. Plasma is found in the blood. Okay, so other plasma solutes are also pushed out of the blood. So the blood proceeding away from the glomerulus is relatively thick. This is very important. The thicker blood is found in the efferent arteriole. The blood which goes through the efferent arteriole becomes highly thick, relatively very thick. The reason, because of high pressure, because of ultrafiltration or because of high pressure in glomerulus, from the blood, most of the water, urea, salt, glucose and other plasma solutes are pushed out into glomerular filtrate. Okay. So this is the reason why the blood in efferent arteriole is relatively thick. Okay. Now, what is that results in formation of glomerular filtrate? Due to ultrafiltration, what is the result of ultrafiltration? Formation of glomerular filtrate. Last class itself I said that we shouldn't call this as urine. We need to note it as glomerular filtrate. The filtrate which comes out of the glomerulus is glomerular filtrate, not urine. Because what is the reason? It consists of essential products too. It consists of water which is not completely going out of our body, which shouldn't go out of our body. Glucose shouldn't leave the body as it is. It has to be stored in our body. So it has to be taken back again. From the glomerular filtrate, our body will absorb it back in the second step. Okay, so there are some essential products too. So this glomerular filtrate is a very dilute solution. The glomerular filtrate is a dilute solution and the blood proceeding after glomerulus is relatively thick. Okay, last class itself I said all these things, but I was just trying to recollect all those things. Now we can go into the second step. The second step is reabsorption. Okay, reabsorption. Already I asked you to split a word if you want to know the meaning of the word very clearly. Re means always it is again, repeated. Okay, again, absorption. So reabsorption is again the essential matters are going to be absorbed back. Okay, so where does this occur? Reabsorption occurs in the renal tubule. Renal tubule is the rest of nephron. After glomerulus, the rest of nephron. It has three parts: proximal convoluted tubule, Henle's loop and distal convoluted tubule. Together we are calling it as renal tubule. Now, the reabsorption will not disturb the concentration of blood. what happens in the PCT is most of the water will be taken back. Okay, most of the water. In ultrafiltration, we have mentioned that in glomerular filtrate there is too much of water. So this water has to be taken back. So what happens in the proximal convoluted tubule? In the proximal convoluted tubule onwards, water is going to be reabsorbed. So how long this reabsorption of water happens in the blood? Till the blood remains in its concentration, till the blood becomes normal. Okay, remember that when it leaves out of the afferent arteriole, it becomes highly thick. So this thick blood has to come back to its normal level. So up to that, water absorption will happen in the proximal convoluted tubule. Okay, so in proximal convoluted tubule, or in the first convoluted tubule which is present next to glomerulus, reabsorption starts to happen, and this reabsorption doesn't disturb the concentration of blood. So we call this reabsorption as selective reabsorption. It's very selective. It shouldn't disturb the concentration of blood. It shouldn't disturb the divinity or the spirit of the blood. It has to maintain what a blood has to possess. Okay, so up to that, all the necessary things will be taken back. Based on that, all the necessary things will be taken back from the glomerular filtrate. Now, in the distal convoluted tubule, what happens in the distal convoluted tubule is, when this filtrate passes through the distal convoluted tubule, the distal convoluted tubule wall, okay, the tubule's wall layer starts to release some substances into the urinary filtrate, into the glomerular filtrate. Listen, when the filtrate passes through the distal convoluted tubule, the tubular walls starts to secrete some substances, some waste products into the filtrate. That means they are adding more waste into the filtrate. They are converting the filtrate into urine. Okay, so what are the substances this distal convoluted tubule is secreting is potassium sort of ions and some of the drugs like penicillin, antibiotics especially. Penicillin is the best known example. That process is known as tubular secretion. Okay, so reabsorption totally occurs in the kidney tubules. So in proximal convoluted tubules, generally water will be absorbed back from the filtrate into the blood. It is absorption, reabsorption. Okay, so reabsorption of water, and glucose will also be absorbed, sodium will also be absorbed, which happens in the proximal convoluted tubule. In the proximal convoluted tubule, water will be absorbed back into the blood, glucose will be absorbed, essential amount of sodium will be absorbed back. So how long this absorption happens? Till the composition of blood is maintained as normal. Okay, up to that it will be absorbing. So that kind of absorption is known as selective absorption. Selective absorption happens in the urinary tubules, especially in the proximal convoluted tubule. Now, when it comes to the Henle's loop, again in Henle's loop, the U-tube loop. Here, in the Henle's loop, most of the water and some of the sodium ions are also being absorbed. What happens in the proximal convoluted tubule? Selective absorption. So what are the things being absorbed here? Water, sodium, glucose. And what happens in the Henle's loop? Absorption, reabsorption of some amount of water, and then reabsorption of remaining sodium ions. And what happens in the distal convoluted tubule? The tubular walls starts secreting waste products into the filtrate. So they are contributing into the filtrate. Okay, what are the substances going to be added into the filtrate there? Potassium sort of ions and most of the waste products which are produced by the antibiotics. Okay, the rest waste of the antibiotics. Okay, after our consumption, after what we need, the rest waste. Okay, that is being introduced into the filtrate. So when the filtrate passes through this way after distal convoluted tubule, we can call it as urine. Okay, after tubular secretion, the filtrate is termed as urine. After tubular secretion occurs in which area? In the distal convoluted tubule. Okay, right? So this is a kind of sum up. What happens in the glomerulus? Ultrafiltration. Remember what is ultrafiltration? Because of high pressure difference which is created by the narrow efferent arteriole, waste materials are being pushed out of the blood into the filtrate and thus forms glomerular filtrate. Okay, just try to recollect what are the products being pushed into the glomerular filtrate. Most of the water from the blood and plasma solutes would be there, and then glucose is there, sodium is there, urea is there, and then salts are there. Okay, so the blood which leaves out of the efferent arteriole or the blood which is in efferent arteriole is relatively very thick. The next one, reabsorption, which starts in the kidney tubules. The first one, proximal convoluted tubule. Here reabsorption of water, glucose, sodium and chloride ions into the body or into the blood from the filtrate. From filtrate they are being reabsorbed back into the body, into the blood, and then in Henle's loop some of the water and chlorides will be taken back into the blood. Now in distal convoluted tubule it is actually in reversal order. Okay, in distal convoluted tubule what happens? Chlorides and water is being absorbed back into, and then potassium and penicillin, they are being secreted into the tubule. Okay, into the tubule, that means they are being added along with the filtrate. So after tubular secretion, this is tubular secretion, potassium and penicillin which is being added into the urine, added into the filtrate, that is tubular secretion. After tubular secretion we can call that as urine. Okay, right? Got it clear? So this is a very important question that you have to learn. Now what happens after this? The urine will be entering into the collecting duct, which is a common duct. Let me take you to the picture. So this is DCT. After DCT we can call that as urine. So urine enters into the collecting duct. This collecting duct will get open in the calyces. Here the calyces are. This callus will open up in pelvis, and through pelvis the ureter, and this ureter opens up in the bladder. Okay, so this is how urine is being added there, drop by drop. When bladder is 3/4 fill, the people may get the compulsion or they may get the feel to urinate, and the process of expulsion of urine out of the body is called micturition or urination. Right? The next one what we are going to learn is physical property of urine. Physical property means just by we are going to check, we are going to tell about its properties. So the first one, color. By look you can see the color, like it is very clear yellow in color. It's yellow in color, clear yellow in color when a person is in normal condition. It may vary, and you should know one thing, we are talking about a biological biological waste product, so it may vary from person to person. It may vary from what their lifestyle depends on. It may vary from person to person based on their food habits. So this is a typical one. This is a normal thing what we are expecting to be. It may vary, and all the variations are not leading to any trouble. Some of the variations leading to trouble. Okay, some of the variations are troublesome, not all the variations. Sometimes if in case of like clear yellow, if it is white in color, if it is too liquid, no problem, the person is drinking too much of water. Not all changes lead into troubles. Okay, so you just understand that. Normally urine color is clear yellow, and what is the reason for this clear yellow color? That is a pigment known as urochrome. Okay, that is because of a pigment which is known as urochrome. Urochrome is the pigment which is responsible for the color of urine. This is important, you have to learn this, urochrome. Now the volume per day, how many liters of urine normally an average a person will micturate out? So 1 to 1.5 liters per day is quite normal. If it is exceeding, okay, no problem. If it is very low, okay, no problem. You just try to make it normal. And if it is exceeding or if it is going below the level, you have to consider this as, okay, there must be some changes. Okay, don't think that all the changes lead into some trouble. Don't think like that. Now the next one is pH. It has to be written as small p and capital H. It doesn't allow editing. Okay, so pH is, I guess you remember what is a pH. Okay. Yeah, my system got stuck up with something. Okay, tell me, what is a pH? pH, I guess you know about pH. What is a pH? pH is the power of hydrogen ion concentration to the base 10. Remember? Negative logarithm of hydrogen ion concentration to the base 10. What it talks about? It talks about the acidity or basicity of any solution. So pH range of the acidity basicity level of any urine, a normal urine, has to be 5 to 8. So 7 is the normal range, which is neutral, and below 7 it is acidic, and above 7 it is basic. So 5 to 8 is generally, it's believed that urine is mostly acidic, because it has urea and uric acid in it. So this is generally, it would be in acidic condition, and a very slight alkalinity is also possible. This is what I am talking about generally. And based, like if you are eating too much of protein based food, your urine becomes acidic. And if you are eating too much of vegetarian food, and urine becomes alkaline, that protein will be digested, and after that it will be turning into amino acid and uric acid production, creatinine formation will be there. So protein diet makes a urine acidic, and vegetable diet makes it alkaline. And odor is actually, urine is not that much producing odor, as it is having ammonia. A pungent smell would be there. As it is having urea, uric acid and ammonia, pungent smell would be there. But on standing, like if the person is holding up the urine for a long time, bacterial activity may start to produce a bad odor in the urine. So the people, those who have a capacity of, those who have the problem of holding urine for a long time, there will be a strong odor, or the strong smell of urine may also be there. And the next one is specific gravity. Specific gravity means relative density. Specific gravity means relative density. So what is this relative density? It's density when it is compared with water. So relative density or the specific gravity of urine in a normal condition has to be 1.003 to 1.035. So this is just a parameter to know whether the person is having any infection or something. If a person is going for a urine test, the people will be checking this too with the help of an instrument called urometer. If you want to know about that, you just Google it up. Urometer will be used to check the specific gravity. It will be having a mercury sort of thing. You can check it in the Google if you wish. It's not in your syllabus. If you are interested to keen about the other things, you can do that. So in physical properties, we are learning about the color, and the color, yellow color, is because of urochrome pigment that you have to learn, urochrome pigment. And the pH you need to be very sure, and this is very important, that's why I have made it in bold. Protein based diet makes the urine acidic, and vegetable based diet, and vegetarian food will makes it alkaline. And the odor is strong ammonia, and on standing it will be producing a strong odor because of the bacterial activity. And specific gravity, you can read once or twice, because till now there is no question from this part. Okay, you can just know it. The next one, constituents of urine. This is very, very important. Most of the questions, mostly from in alternative years, you can expect a question from this part. So constituents of urine, there is 95% it's water, and the remaining 5% is solid waste. 95% urine is composed of just water. And then in this 5% solid waste, what are the two things that we are classifying is organic constituents are also there, and inorganic constituents are also there. So the organic constituents, it has urea, creatinine, uric acid. Why we categorize this as organic constituent is, these are all from our cellular metabolites, cellular metabolism. It's a byproduct of our cellular metabolism. So urea, creatinine, uric acid, and some other substances will also be there. That includes hormones, like some of the fat molecules. So those things are like not fat exactly, it would be fatty acids may be there, drops of fatty acids or traces of fatty acids may be there. So other substances may also be there. And inorganic constituents, generally in a normal level, sodium chloride would be there and potassium chloride. So that's what sodium and potassium ions we are learning in the form of chlorine ions, sodium ions, potassium ions may be there. And then ammonia will also be there. So these are the inorganic constituents found in it. And apart from this, some other constituents are also there. But you're learning for your syllabus, for your age, you're learning only about these things. Urea, creatinine, uric acid are the organic constituents. This is important, you have to learn. Organic constituents are urea, uric acid and creatinine. Inorganic constituents are sodium chloride, potassium chloride and ammonia. Okay, so you have to learn this. And now we are going into the abnormalities. Abnormalities mean abnormal conditions, right? Besides the normal constituents, just in the previous slide you have learned about the constituents of urine. So besides this normal constituents, sometimes some abnormal constituents may also be there in the urine. So these are the 4 different conditions. There are so many different conditions, but these are the 4 different conditions that you are going to learn. The first one is hematuria. Hematuria, please know the spelling. Heme, H-A-E-M, heme. Heme means, yes, you're right, it's blood. Heme means it's blood. Okay, hemoglobin is a protein found in blood, right? So hematuria is in urine. Traces of blood or blood particles may be there. Blood cells or blood may be there in the urine. So the person, when they are urinating, traces of blood may also be there. That is known as hematuria. Okay, so this may be because of any urinary infection, or if a person have any kidney stone, or if a person has any tumor or something, hematuria may be there. Hematuria doesn't mean the person is having something so serious. Maybe because of urinary infection too it can happen. Okay, urinary infection is just quite normal, right? So hematuria is a kind of abnormality in which blood or traces of blood would be there. Blood cells are found in the urine. And the next one is albumin. Here you need to know about albumin. Albumin is one of the major plasma protein. One of the major protein found in our blood plasma. And this albumin is responsible for our water balance in our body. This albumin is doing a lot of work. Generally, albumin will not be coming into the glomerular filtrate from glomerulus. Generally, albumin will not be coming into the glomerular filtrate. Sometimes, due to the problem, due to high blood pressure of the person, if a person is having high blood pressure, or maybe sometimes the person's Bowman's cups permeability is infected because of some bacterial infection, the Bowman's cups permeability is affected, then it will be allowing albumin from blood to go into the glomerular filtrate. By this time the albumin will not be reabsorbed back into our body because it's beyond normal, right? So our body will not take back albumin. Albumin starts to go out along with the urine. So this will affect the internal metabolism. So albumin is very important for our body. The next condition is presence of bile pigments. These bile pigments are actually produced by our liver, isn't it? So if there is any problem in the liver, like it can be anemia, or it can be hepatitis, or the person is having liver cirrhosis. So in those sort of liver disorder, the person will excrete out, will send bile pigments. The person's body will send bile pigments into the urine. So bile pigment starts to go out along with the urine. So these are the 3 major disorders. And one more disorder that we need to know is glycosuria. This is very important from exam point of view. Glycosuria is glycogen or glucose, right? So glycosuria means urine with glucose, or glucose is found along with urine. Okay, so we are going to learn a little more about this glycosuria. It's a condition generally we can find in diabetes people. Glycosuria is one of the symptom of this diabetes people. In diabetes there are 2 different types. We need to learn the 2 different types of diabetes. I'm not talking about type 1, type 2 diabetes. This is another thing. Diabetes mellitus and diabetes insipidus. Okay, there are two different types of diabetes based on the hormones. So there are two different types. The one is diabetes mellitus and the other one is diabetes insipidus. Now in glycosuria, I said it's a condition found in diabetes mellitus. Okay, mellitus means sugar. Okay, mellitus, mellis or mellitus means it's sugar. So when the urine becomes so sugary, urine becomes too much filled with sweets, sugar, that is known as diabetes mellitus. Okay, so for diabetes mellitus, the person's urine becomes sweetish. And what is the reason for this diabetes mellitus is, when our blood is loaded with sugar from our body, there will be a hormone that is known as insulin. This hormone is secreted by our body. Okay, our body will be secreting this hormone. This insulin is secreted by our body. This insulin will be converting the blood glucose into glycogen and will be stored on top of liver. So that's quite normal function. When a person's body is producing less insulin, when insulin becomes insufficient, the person's urine becomes too sugary. The glucose starts to go out along with the urine. Can you understand that? When insulin is too low in a person's body, the glucose starts to go out along with the urine. There is no taken back of glucose from the urinary filtrate, from the glomerular filtrate. That condition leads to diabetes mellitus. Okay, so this is first one. The second one, diabetes insipidus. Okay, the condition is because of low secretion of another hormone, that is anti-diuretic hormone. What is it? Anti-diuretic hormone. This anti-diuretic hormone, there is another name for it, that is vasopressin. Anti-diuretic hormone or vasopressin is secreted by pituitary. Okay, this is from pituitary. So this anti-diuretic hormone or vasopressin will take back water from the filtrate. This is responsible for the reabsorption of water. So when ADH becomes insufficient, water will not be taken back from the filtrate. So the urine becomes too much watery. That is a sweetless or tasteless. Okay, so there are two conditions. One is diabetes mellitus and another one is diabetes insipidus. Diabetes mellitus is due to insufficient or low insulin. Diabetes insipidus is due to low ADH. Okay, what is the result of diabetes mellitus? Urine becomes sugary. The result of diabetes insipidus is urine becomes watery. Okay, so in differentiate between question, you can expect this. They can ask you the hormone that is responsible, or they can ask you the question like in true or false, or in correct the statement, they can ask you that. So both of this diabetes is due to the insufficient secretion of hormones. Mellitus is sugar. Mellilotus or mellitus, this means sugar. So this mellis or mellitus, this is sugary urine. Insipidus is watery urine, that is tasteless urine. That is because of low secretion of anti-diuretic hormone or vasopressin. Okay, if you don't have vasopressin name in your book, don't worry, we are going to learn the hormone lesson separately. At that time I'll tell you that again. This again will be repeated in that lesson, so no problem. You just learn that diabetes mellitus is due to low insulin and diabetes insipidus is due to low ADH. Okay, so these are the two kinds of diabetes that we are learning. So in abnormalities, we discussed about 4 different abnormalities. The first one is hematuria, urine with blood cells or blood trace, and albumin will go along with urine due to the infection in the Bowman's cup or due to high blood pressure. And then bile pigments may go out along with urine due to liver problem. And then glycosuria is a condition which is a symptom of diabetes mellitus, that is glucose is expelled along with urine. So these are the 4 abnormalities, and then we discussed about 2 different types of diabetes too. Now in the next thing, we need to know about osmoregulation or the regulation of urine output. Now, kidney is known as master chemist. In justification sort of question, they can ask you this: why do we call kidney as the master chemist of our body? The major reason why we are calling kidney as a master chemist is it maintains the composition or osmotic pressure or osmoregularity of our blood, osmotic concentration of our blood. It maintains the pH of our blood, it maintains the density of our blood, it maintains the gravity of our blood. Okay, so everything is maintained by the kidney. The blood is maintained as it is by the kidney. That's why we are calling it as the master chemist. That is how it is being achieving this osmoregulation, or how kidney is maintaining this osmotic concentration of blood. There are two major functions that you have studied already in skin lesson. There are two major functions. During summer, we used to sweat more, we used to perspire more, and we will be eliminating only very little amount of water through urine. Okay, as we are perspiring more, as we are sweating more, as most of the water goes out through the largest organ of our body, that is skin, kidney will be reducing the amount of micturition. Okay, the water has to be, otherwise if you are urinating too much during in summer too, we may feel or we may go dehydrated. So what happens naturally is the kidney will control the amount of micturition. The urination will be relatively thick. The urine that we are expelling out, or the urine that we are sending out of our body, will be relatively thick during summer days. It will be so thick and so yellow in color. So that reason is to maintain osmoregulation in our body. Kidney is taking in more amount of water back, or it reabsorbs more amount of water. What happens during winter time is water is not going out of our body by perspiration. Skin doesn't do that perspiration work much during winter. So what happens? Urine has to be very high, or urine has to be very diluted. So kidney has to do some extra work, or it has to do some overtime work to do that osmotic concentration or osmotic pressure in a normal way. So this is how the osmoregulation is maintained in our body. Okay, so we can call kidney as the master chemist, very sure, by these two reasons. And the next one, during some abnormal conditions, during some trouble that we are facing in our life or in our body. The first such case where kidney is doing a lot of work is at the time of cholera infection. You would have heard about cholera infection. The person who is having cholera infection will be vomiting out too much. The person will be complaining about watery bowels. You would have heard about that in your lower classes. You would have studied about that. So cholera is a kind of infection which will be making the person to eliminate too much of water from the body as watery bowel or by vomiting. In this time, the person's blood will go rehydrated. The body will go dehydrated very fast. So what our body is doing is, the kidney will be struggling too much to maintain a normal level. But beyond its level, what happens is, because of the huge pressure which is created in the kidney, because of the huge stress which is created in the kidney, sometimes urea is taken back into the blood. Okay, so that leads to a condition known as uremia. So uremia means accumulation of urea in the blood. This is important. Uremia means accumulation of urea in the blood. So when our body is dehydrated, because of the pressure which is created on kidney to maintain osmotic concentration, the kidney will try to suck urea along with water. The urea will be taken back into the blood in a high concentration, leading to the accumulation of urea in the blood, and that condition is known as uremia. Okay, so this uremia condition is actually very fatal. The person can even be killed if uremia is happening. So how to stop that? We need to rehydrate the person. You need to rehydrate the person. Rehydration is the best thing to stop uremia. So how to rehydrate by giving them ORS. What is ORS? You all would have had ORS once in your lifetime at least. ORS is a acronym, or it's a short form of, it's not acronym, it's a short form of oral rehydration solution. Oral rehydration solution. So oral means you are giving it through your mouth, you are taking that solution into your mouth. It's nothing but in if you are getting some dysentery or something, doctors used to suggest you a powder which has to be mixed with water, which will be having like electrolyte water, or which will be having both salt and sugar, or sometimes simply salt and sugar. Your parents may mix it at home and they can ask you to drink. That is what ORS. So it will be having both salt and sugar in it to provide you the electrolyte balance. So that is what ORS. So if a person is having cholera, or if a person is having dysentery, if the body is losing too much of water abnormally, the person has to be given ORS, that is to stop uremia. What we are doing is rehydrating our body to stop dehydration, so that we can continuously stop the uremia too. So because uremia is too dangerous. Okay, so what is uremia? Are you saying the answer? I guess you are. Uremia means accumulation of urea in the body. So these are the important points that you have to learn for your exams. Generally these questions are the check questions for centum. So these are the things you have to learn. Okay, so in our body, high concentration of urea is found in glomerulus, because when compared with the blood which is coming out of the hepatic vein, the concentration of urea is not so high because it's found along with the blood. When it leaves, or when it is found in the glomerulus, the blood is leaving out of the efferent arteriole, and what is found here is a huge amount of urea. So the concentration of urea in our body is very high in the glomerulus. Okay, and the next one, the blood vessel which contains the least concentration of urea is the renal vein. Just imagine that. Just think about that. When it leaves, when the blood vessel leaves a nephron, it's getting all the urea drained into the glomerular filtrates, right? So when in renal vein, the blood in renal vein is actually literally with no urea, right? So the blood vessel which contains the least concentration of urea has to be the renal vein. And the next one, blood vessel which has more urea in human body, the blood vessel. Now we are talking about the blood vessel. This is the part of the body which has high concentration of urea. Here the blood vessel which has more urea in our body is, why it is hepatic vein? Because urea is produced in the liver. So when the blood vessel comes out of the liver, it is coming out with urea. So which has more urea in human body is hepatic vein. Sometimes they can ask you a question like they can give you two blood vessels, afferent arteriole and efferent arteriole. Where is urea is more? In which blood vessel urea is more? So at that time, very sure you will go with afferent arteriole, but in efferent arteriole, no urea. Okay, so these four statements, one I said now in between afferent and efferent arteriole. So the four statements you have to make very sure. These are the centum checking question, like these are the hard thinking questions in your syllabus. Okay, the next one, dialysis. This is given under miscellaneous information, but still you need to learn. Dialysis is like a kind of artificial kidney. Sometimes if a person's kidney goes failure, any one of the kidney is not functioning proper, the person's body may not cooperate with cleaning up of blood. The body may start to show a symptom of uremia. Okay, so at that time the person may be suggested to go with dialysis. Okay, not for easy thing. If out of the two kidney, if one is failing, the other one may go with the work. But if both the kidneys are not doing proper, or one of the kidney is not doing proper and the other one is doing less work, or the kidney is removed from the person, so those sort of cases dialysis will be advised. Now in dialysis what happens is, in the first or second visit, like when before doing dialysis, the person's generally dialysis will be done in the arm, any one of the arm. they will be merging an artery and vein. They will be uniting an artery and vein with the help of a tube, or by connecting it together, like by grafting. I have studied about grafting, right, in plants. So they may do a grafting of an artery and vein, and they will take the blood out of the artery and they will introduce the blood into the vein. Okay, so there will be two tubes. Can you see that, 1 and 2 here? So from artery they will take the blood out. The blood will go into the machine, and here inside the machine there is a fiber and there are some liquids. And when this go in, literally it's just mimicking what our kidney is doing. So this blood will go into the liquid, go into a solution through a fiber substance. So that will be literally filtering the blood and maintaining the same composition of blood. So what kidney is doing within that small space, this huge machine will be doing. So the next, then after the purification, blood will come out and that will be injected into the vein of a person's, another vein of the same hand, same arm. Okay, so this is what dialysis machine. So artificial kidney or dialysis machine, you need to know about that. If a person's kidney go failure, then the person may go with this dialysis. Okay, so this is what the dialysis machine or dialysis thing will be look alike. So that's it about this lesson. So today we have learned about first ultrafiltration. We learn about ultrafiltration, and then we learn about reabsorption, right? Ultrafiltration and then reabsorption, and then this is the gist of steps in urine formation. And then we learn the physical properties of urine, and the color is because of this pigment urochrome, right? And then constituents of urine, what are the organic constituents and what are the inorganic constituents. In your book it is given, the ratio is also given, the numbers are also there. You don't want to learn the number, but you should learn this. And then we learn this abnormalities, these 4 abnormalities: hematuria, glycosuria. These things they can ask for defined sort of questions: hematuria, glycosuria, because these terms, these are medical terms, right? Now if you're learning all these things, you can talk to a doctor. Okay, if your parent is a doctor, you just go talk to them, just make them feel like, wow, my kid is growing good, right? So this is osmoregulation, and how kidney is maintaining this osmoregulation, what happens during summertime and what happens during winter time, why we urinate too much during winter and why we are not urinating too much during summer, and what our body is achieving because of this. Right? Simple osmoregulation, or what is osmoregulation? Maintaining or regulating osmotic concentration or osmotic pressure of blood is osmoregulation. Which organ is doing osmoregulation? That is kidney. Now I needed you to go with 4 sentences here in this, and then about artificial kidney we discussed. That's it about this lesson. I guess you understood this lesson so clearly. This is a very interesting lesson and a very good lesson. I have to learn too many terms, but still this lesson will make you feel like so good. This is a very interesting lesson. So I guess you understood all the concepts what I taught you. If there is any doubt, you just message me. I'm continuously saying about taking notes, and if there is any doubt, you just clear it. If it is in class, you would have asked me so many questions. You may have too many doubts to discuss with me, but no one is asking any doubt to me except a very few kids. And I got notes from only one kid. The picture of your note, just only one kid is messaging me the notes that you are taking. I need you to take a picture of your note and send it to me, just to check whether you are doing it or not. Just do it, and I need you to do that in a very clear way. You can upload that in a classroom, or you can upload that in WhatsApp. Okay, thank you kids, and complete your homework for today is you just complete this lesson for your next week cycle test. Thank you kids.